Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today we're doing a top 5 DPS for Battlegrounds. This is all my opinion. People will have different opinions than me. That's okay. The qualifications for meeting this video are good damage, good AoE damage, and then decent self-reliability, so you don't really need a healer with you. That's really it. And of course, with the current World of Warcraft, almost every spec can be viable in Battlegrounds, and I say Battlegrounds specifically because Arena's a different game for the most part, but the only, like, you can even make Enhancement Shaman and Pharaoh Druid be good in Battlegrounds and top the damage meters if you play it correctly. So, first off, it's Fury Warrior. Fury Warrior has very good self-heals. Bloodthirst heals for 6% of your max health every time you use it on a 4-second cooldown. It also clears snares and movement impairing effects. And you can also spec into Battle Trance, which also gives you extra heals, 3% of your health every 3 seconds, or 1% of your health every second, for 18 seconds. So after, obviously, a minute, you'll be generating 60% of your health. Other than that, we also have damage reduction through Warpaint, AoE, offensiveness through Siegebreaker, and Whirlwind. If you use Whirlwind, it makes your single target abilities hit everyone up to 4 enemies for 50% of the original damage. So if you use Whirlwind every 2 abilities, so you can constantly cleave people, you can do decent AoE damage as well. Obviously, Siegebreaker, I'd say, is a big contribution as to why you do good AoE damage, because it does apply a 15% damage increase to any target that your Whirlwind Siegebreaker does hit. That's 40k DPS in 3 people. Of course, I mean, people with higher armor are going to take reduced damage, which is the only, I'd say, downside to Fury Warrior, is that people with armor will take reduced damage from you, but the upside of it is you don't need a healer, you have your own self-reliability, you have decent defensive, and you have decent self-heals, and you have somewhat decent CC with Stormbolt and Intimidating Shout. You also have an immunity to fear on a 1-minute cooldown for 6 seconds, so this is really good against Warlocks or Destro Warlocks, which I think are played pretty frequently in Battlegrounds these days. There's also a talent I enjoy taking called Slaughterhouse. It pretty much makes your Bloodthirst do extra damage and also increases the healing it does, and then it's only usable, or it only triggers its effects when the target's below 50% health. But, like I said, this can be really good and be very clutch in some situations. If you do use Slaughterhouse along with Enraged Regen, if you're hitting someone below 50% health, this will have its cooldown reduced to 2 seconds, so it's like Bloodthirst, Raging Blow, and then Bloodthirst would be up again. So if you use this with Enraged Regen, obviously you're going to be generating in 5 or 6 globals, you'll have all of your max health back as long as the target's below 50% health. And then if you use Furious Charge and use Enraged Regen together, you pretty much get your entire health bar back, which is very underlooked. And then the last thing to mention, I suppose, is just our straight-up mastery. Our mastery just increases our damage by 30%, and most times you are enraged, so you constantly have a 30% damage increase, and this obviously stacks very well with Berserking. So in conclusion, I think Fury Warrior is very good because we have very good self-healers. We have very good self-heals, you don't really need a healer, and you have good damage and good AoE damage. So the next class that I'd say is the best for Battlegrounds is, or one of the best for Battlegrounds, is Shadow Priest. The main reason is obviously our dots. You just need to apply Vampiric Touch to any target that's around you, and you do get decent self-heals back from this. I'll see how much health I get back from this, but I wouldn't doubt it if I got like 150,000 health just from dotting all those people. But the more people you have Vampiric Touch on, the more self-healing you'll have, so this is really good in high mob density, and I refer to mobs as people, but in high person player density in Battlegrounds, this does pay off fairly well. You also have Shadow Insight, which I enjoy, because it just resets the cooldown on your Mind Blast. I think Mind Blast does very good damage. You also have Dispersion. I think everyone knows what Dispersion does, but it pretty much makes you take reduced damage. It also generates, I think, 60% of your health back. Generates a decent amount of health back, and then you can kind of just be immune to certain damaging effects while you're in that. You also have a stun, which can be really good against healers, and you can control healers very, very well as a Shadow Priest, especially in Battlegrounds. And they don't really expect it half the time as well. Pro tip, don't take Auspicious Spirits anymore, it's kind of garbage now. I've heard Shadow or Death and Shadow Crash are probably the best choices here as well. Lingering Insanity, I say, is another reason why I think Shadow Priest is really good, especially when you're applying your dots to everyone, and have your dots going at a decent pace in Battlegrounds. The amount of insanity you generate and the haste that you do get from this talent will make it so you're pretty much in void form 100% of the time. And obviously when you keep your haste after void form, it just lets you generate your void form that much faster. So you're really out of shadow form maybe 25% of the time, and you're in void form, I'd say 75% of the time. And obviously void form buffs your haste, buffs your shadow damage, and then gives you void bolt, which is a decent AoE ability. We'll see how fast I generate my void form here. It shouldn't be too long. It's probably like a 3-second downtime of void form, honestly. And it's back up. Didn't have a timer going, but that was just a very, very low downtime on that. We also have Legacy of the Void, which I personally enjoy, and I don't think you really take any other of these towns. You can take Surrender to Madness, but I just don't think it's that great. And it's kind of just suicide, but Legacy of the Void is usually taken here. We also have Void Origins, which just makes your Void Eruption instant cast. Greater Fade, which literally is a bubble on a 45-second cooldown as long as you don't cast abilities. You can Greater Fade a decent amount of damage and get about 2 Shadow Mends off in the middle of it. And then follow it with the Dispersion, which is kind of the self-reliability of Shadow Priest in Battlegrounds. So in conclusion, you're not really relying on healers, which is kind of similar to Fury Warrior. You have decent AoE damage, except it's in the form of damage over time effects, which are very good against Resto Druids because it kind of counteracts their heal over times. You have a Silence, you have a Stun, you have a Fear, and then you have just AoE abilities. And then you can also steal haste from people, which I haven't done recently, but you can use this on healers and it really fucks them over if you manage to maintain it. The only bad part about it is that it's a 20-second duration on the target, so you kind of have to either have the target with a focus macro and then focus cast Mind Flay on them constantly, or just somehow 500 IQ it and then make sure you always have this applied to 2 people. But if you do apply this to 2 people, you get 24% haste on yourself, and then you take away 12% haste from the people you're using your Mind Flay on, and this can also be really good. Also, Siphon is very, very overlooked in my opinion. 45-second cooldown. The main reason you use this is for the healing reduction, which is really good against flag carriers or healers or anyone who's really getting heals in a battleground. So the next class is Havoc Demon Hunter. Anyone that plays Havoc Demon Hunter knows it's very good for Battlegrounds. The main reason behind that is Blade Dance, I suppose. Blade Dance plus Trail of Ruin, which is a talent that you do take most times, / every time. Blade Dance causes 7,000 damage over 4 seconds, or about 1,500 every second, and then that applies onto your normal Blade Dance damage. And then if you do go into Metamorphosis form or Demon form, I always call it Metamorphosis for some reason, but if you go in Demon form and use Blade Dance, it does buff the damage of Blade Dance a little bit more. Your Blade Dance does do significantly more damage on your primary target as well. I'm going to stop my DPS here, and then just watch the AoE damage there. 31,000 just from one Blade Dance, and let's use it without Metamorphosis. So that's the initial damage right there. And then that's the dot damage, 23,000, which still is pretty good on a 7-second cooldown. And then obviously when you are using Blade Dance, you dodge every attack. You can dodge Kidneys, Envenoms, Templar's Verdicts, Storm Bolts. You can pretty much dodge anything you can think of in a Blade Dance if you do time it correctly, but the chance you time it correctly, it's kind of RNG. In Arena, I always complain on Rogue that I always try to Kidney and do a Blade Dance, so it's really a chance. Other than that, we have decent self-heals, as with all of these classes. Demonic Appetite is kind of my favorite here, even though Fellblade is a gap closer. The only reason I use Demonic Appetite is because it reduces the cooldown of Metamorphosis when you do shatter a Soul Fragment off the target. If I could get that, that'd be cool. Give me a Soul Fragment. Give me a Soul Fragment. Okay. 23,000 heals from that Soul Fragment, so that's about 10% of my health. Very decent in my opinion, and very overlooked in most situations, especially in Battlegrounds. And then obviously if you collect the soul, it reduces the cooldown of I-Beam. And then if you reduce the cooldown of I-Beam, it reduces the cooldown of your Demon form, and then Demon form buffs your haste and leech. Soul Rending, if you take Soul Rending, it also increases your leech while out of Demon form by 10%, so you are just self-healing a little bit as well. And then if you are in Demon form, you gain 10% additional leech while in Metamorphosis. While in Metamorphosis, you will gain 30% leech, which is probably the most leech you will get out of any class in the game right now. And then obviously it buffs your Chaos Strike and Blade Dance. You also have a very good kit when it comes to honor talents. You have Eye of Leothris, which you can throw on people who use single target spells a lot, like Shadow Priest, Balanced Druids, Warlocks, anything like that. It will just make them take additional magic damage whenever they do cast an ability. You have a Mana Burn effect, you have a Fly in the Air, Fuck You melee effect, as I like to call it, because whenever you're playing melee, if a Demon Hunter flies in the air with this ability, you just won't be able to hit them for about 8 seconds. And then the whole time while they're up there, they're doing 10% of your max health with every global. We also have Glimpse, which can be really good, especially against melee. And then if you take this with the Vengeful Retreat talent, which is somewhere around here, but I don't know where it is. Maybe it's removed now, but I think the other thing worth mentioning here is reverse magic. This can be really good against Warlocks or Shadow Priest. If you use this and a lot of your teammates have Shadow Priest dots on them, you use this, it cleanses them, and then sends the dots back to the Shadow Priest, or whoever you're trying to send the dots back to. Or Boomy. It's pretty much a mass AoE cleanse that reverses the dots to the caster. We also have Fell Eruption. It's just a straight up stun for 4 seconds on a 30-second cooldown. It has a fairly decent range, so that's why it's pretty decent. We also have a Purge. I always forget about the Purge effect. We have 10-second cooldown, removes it, generates a Soul Shard if you have a certain trait, and then generates 20 Fury for you. You also generate Fury on your successful interrupts, which I think should be a thing for every class, and I don't know why it's not yet, but you also have an AoE stun, which is really good with Blade Dance, and I always forget about it. Your AoE stun, if you use it and then Blade Dance, it just applies so much pressure to people. I've won team fights in Battlegrounds just because I get a good Chaos Nova, then follow it up with Metamorphosis and Blade Dance, and then do my normal AoE kind of thing. We also have Darkness, which is a mass AoE immunity pretty much. If you do take a certain talent cover of Darkness, it makes it so you have a 70% chance to avoid all damage, and if your teammates stack in this, it's pretty much a mass bubble on a 3-minute cooldown, which... The next class on this list is Windwalker Monk. There's a very specific reason I said Windwalker Monk for Battlegrounds and not Arena, even though it is very good for Arena, but for Battlegrounds, Alpha Tiger, I think is really, really overlooked. 30% haste for 8 seconds. This effect cannot occur more than once every 30 seconds per target. But if you Tiger Palm a new target, you get 30% haste. So, you hit a Resto Druid, you get 30% haste. You hit an Unholy DK, you get 30% haste. Then you hit 2 other targets, 30% haste whenever you Tiger Palm those targets. Then obviously haste just generally stacks pretty well. We'll show you guys the haste buff. So you'll see here my abilities, and the big showcase here, I suppose, is when you use Fist of Fury. Just the channeled effect of it is shortened so much when you use haste, and then you use Tiger Palm on another target, and then you get 30% haste again. And then whenever you Tiger Palm different targets, it will buff your Spinning Crane Kick as well. Then we Tiger Palm another target, 30% haste again. And then by the time that we get to the last target, which will be this one, the Tiger Palm effect will be reset on the first target. And then you just do this endlessly on multiple targets, and it's pretty much 30% haste uptime the entire battleground if you do it correctly. You'll see here, back on the main target, 30% haste buff again. So that's, I'd say, a big contribution as to why we're good. Other than that, obviously, we have everything monks that normally monks have, such as Teleport, Flying Surf and Kick, Rolls, Teleport, Rolls, Dampen Harm, Fortifying Brew, Karma, Touch of Death, major cooldowns such as Serenity or Earth, Fire, and Wind if you do use that. We also have Reverse Arm. I think it's really good. I overlook it a lot, but pretty much heals you for 8% of your max health and then does that damage to a target. So the higher health someone has, the higher damage this will do to a target. Usually when I use it, it does about 20k damage. If you use it on a 300k health target, probably does about 25k damage. Hits through Bop, hits through Bop. That's like the only thing worth mentioning, I suppose, but suppose that's it. I don't know, monks, like, it's a very simple class when you don't think about the mobility aspect of it. Mobility's 75% of monk, and then damage is, I'd say, 25% of it, but the main reason I'd say it's on here is for Tiger Palm / Alpha Tiger. It's just so good. It makes your channeled Fist of Fury effect so much less of a cast time. Just buffs your haste, which also buffs your energy regeneration rate. And then you can just have pretty much 100% uptime on it as well. I don't know. I've been having a lot of fun with Windwalker lately in Battlegrounds, so that's why it's on this list. You also have Leg Sweep. Leg Sweep is just an AoE stun. Very, very good. It's kind of like Chaos Nova, but for a monk, obviously. You also have decent AoE abilities if you do take Whirling Dragon Punch instead of Serenity. Personally, I just take Serenity because I don't like keeping track of my pets. But Whirling Dragon Punch, if you do get a good Leg Sweep off and then get a Whirling Dragon Punch off, it's pretty much the same thing as a Blade Dance on steroids. You also have Turbo Fist. Turbo Fist makes you parry effects, reduces the movement speed of everyone in front of you. Very good, especially against people who are mobile, such as Demon Hunter, because then they have to dash away, or a Druid. It'll slow the Druid to the point where if they even try to use the Mega Sprint on a 45-second cooldown, that they won't be able to get away. We also have Pressure Points. I personally have never used this, but everyone tells me it's really good. The only reason I don't use this is because usually when someone gets below 10% health, they either just die immediately, or they get away. So, if you do use this, though, it's very easy to tap damage meters. It just pretty much kills the target if they're below 10% health. Also, another thing worth mentioning is your spinning crane kick trait, which I love, absolutely. We'll try to get it to proc here. You guys saw it when I was showing the haste buff from Alpha Tiger, but we do get the spinning crane kick debuff. You guys will see the damage it does, and then it obviously just increases for every target that you do hit with certain abilities. So there's the proc. We're going to Alpha Tiger this guy, so the channel time of it is decreased a little bit. That did 150,000 damage in that, like, 2-second window. It was honestly too fast for me to keep track. Trying to showcase it here. Alpha Palm. Yeah, 150,000 damage there to 4 targets. Very, very good. That's most of the time going to be to top your damage meters along with Fist of Fury, but with Fist of Fury, Spinning Crane Kick, and Reverse Harm is such a deadly kit, especially in AoE situations. So, Destruction Warlock. There really shouldn't be a surprise that Destruction Warlock is on this list. I'm just going to show you why it's on this list. Kind of messed up there. This is it. This is the pinnacle of PvP here. You pretty much just use Chaos Bolt over and over and over again, and the more you use it, the more damage it does, which I'd like to add as well. The damage doesn't really get reduced in PvP, which I think is fucking glorious. 130,000, probably one more for decent damage. 132,000. This was without Blood Fury as well. So if I had Blood Fury up, I don't know how much it would increase the damage, but would probably increase the damage a little bit. And Infernal does very good AoE damage as well. There is a certain, I think it's an Azurite Essence that has a chance to summon random Infernal. It will grant you the Infernal bonus damage whenever it is summoned. That's the main reason. I just think Chaos Bolt's the new... It's not the new Greater Pyro, but it's like a 2-second cast Greater Pyro. It really matters on how much haste you have, honestly, but... Chaos Bolt, guys, don't overlook it. And if you see a Warlock casting Chaos Bolt, just run in the opposite direction. Other than that, let's talk about Warlock. 10% max health, 150% increased armor. This will scale better with the more item level you have, but right now I have 35% physical damage reduction, which is about the level of a male class. We also have a spammable Fear, very good against healers. We have Mortal Coil, which will heal you a decent bit, probably about 40% of your max health. One Mortal Coil healed me for 51,000. That's a decent heal. Unending Resolve, 40% damage reduction, immunity to interrupt and silence effects, even though you really only use it for damage reduction. Kind of it. I think it's really just Chaos Bolt that carries the spec right now, and the fact that your haste is buffed incredibly high in certain circumstances if you do get the haste buff. There we go. 1,200 haste. The cast time of my Chaos Bolt right now is 1.4 seconds. If I use my haste trinket, it is 1.8 seconds. Oh, my haste buff fell off. Well, pretty much your Chaos Bolt just has a very low cast time and hits as hard as a Greater Pyro sometimes, so that's really the only reason it's on the spec through the list here. Well, thanks for watching, guys. Of course, this list is very flexible. In my opinion, I think any class can be good in Battlegrounds, but in my opinion, these are the ones that can carry the hardest, or I just enjoy playing the most. As always, guys, thank you for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, description, bell thing. Check out the Twitch, check out the Twitter. Both of it's linked in the description below. And as always, I'll see you guys next time.